very special day, very special occasion, and we'll get right into it here, use the most of our time, and start us off, David.
Jerry and Jimmy, David Moore, Dallas Morning News. Can you talk a little bit about both of you, just about the conversations you had in LA before the Chargers game, and then the meeting a week or two after that when, Jimmy, you came in to the Star and both of y'all talked, and both of you came to the determination this is the time to do this?
Well, yeah, there at the Chargers game, it's funny because every time I'm with Jerry, I mean, even here for the last hour or so, we tell stories back and forth and laugh and cut up, and kind of like Terry Bradshaw said when he saw us together at the Hall of Fame, he said, when you two guys are together, it's like a couple of brothers, laughing and cutting up and telling stories. And we told some stories. Some of them we can't talk about here, but we told stories back and forth, and then the Ring of Honor thing came up, and Jerry, I'll let you, say there.
Well, you're going to hear me in today, and other than that, I'm not that scripted. But you're going to hear the word right, and when we finally make the word that says he's in the Ring of Honor, the rightful place for him. And that says it all from my perspective. It's so easy for me to go back to our very first weeks and remember when we first became a part of the Cowboys together. And I can remember a week or so before that, I can remember personal visits. I visited with Jimmy about some of them, and Dallas was really down and out. The banks were broke. It was a hard financial time. Most of you don't remember it, maybe weren't here, but certainly not old enough to, really. But it was a rough time in Dallas. And I said, those Cowboys down there, Staubach and Bob Lilly, and I said, boy, they have such a part of what feels good about in Dallas. And wouldn't it be something if we went down there and somehow were a part of getting that thing going and became a part of reviving not only the feeling about the Cowboys kicking their ass, but also just the whole feel in the economy. And we were actually talking like that.
Right.
A couple of, I'm going to call us knotheads. We were, what were we? You were 45, I was 46.
Right.
But we remember those stories. I remember those conversations, and many liked them as well as better than I remember yesterday's conversation.
People, they hear the story and they don't believe it. But I don't ever remember Jerry even asking me to be the coach of the Cowboys. It was kind of an assumption. And when I showed up there at the press conference and I went back and came back over, we never talked contract. We never talked money. We didn't even actually do a contract for a month or two.
Months.
And I just told him, I said, I just don't want to make less than what I made at University of Miami. I'm happy, to be here. But that was the relationship that we had back and forth. And the one thing, too, Jerry and I talked every single day. And as you know, Jerry can talk. And I'd go over to his office, and sometimes it'd be hours, and I'd have work to do, but Jerry'd be talking. But we talked every single day. I think maybe we talked so much because when you're 1 in 15, you don't have a whole lot of friends. And so we were talking to each other. But that's the relationship we've had from day one.
One of the reasons, I had all the respect and that you could possibly have for Jimmy's intellect and his ability to coach. And I say that knowing that that's a mouthful when you say your ability to coach. He obviously had tremendous success at the collegiate level, had not coached at the pro level, but I never even thought about that, to be very candid with you. Jimmy fired me up He was inspirational to me, always had been inspirational. And we had a good communication. We could really communicate, almost knew what the other one was going to say before they opened their mouth. Consequently, we didn't have any real head-to-head negative stuff about it. Could tell if there was something array or wrong. I could a little bit from time to time, but it was a very positive thing. And why I'm talking about as much as I am is at that time we had such criticism for the changes, such criticism for Coach Landry no longer going to be the coach. Such criticism for literally what we weren't about. There was an established, our media were very entrenched with Tech's realm and should have been. Tex was outstanding, as many of you well know. Having said all of that, we were not necessarily, at least I wasn't, and I use that term liberally, Jimmy, I wasn't the fair-haired boy around here from having made those changes when we were coming in. And so it was just good to see somebody kind of smiling at you a little bit when we'd sit around and talk and do those things. The other thing that I would say is we really did have the attitude of cutting and shooting. It was, I don't want to call it irresponsible risk-taking, but boy, we talked about it, and when we were talking about it, that meant that something might happen before we get down the hall. Now, we weren't waiting around, and it was yesterday for us. So all of that permeated the relationship and, frankly, permeated the attitude about how we made decisions back then.
All right, let's go to Clarence.
Four Star Telegram. You guys certainly have talked about how you were brothers in the relationships. There's so many former players who still kind of miss about the whole situation because they keep wondering what might have been if y'all had stayed together. Both of you guys, what would you do differently looking back on it?
I think for me, the biggest thing was communication. You know, when we're together, everything's fantastic. I think maybe the fourth or maybe the fifth year, we kind of got apart a little bit where we didn't talk every single day. And so the communication probably could have gotten better. But we had a great run, something that we're both very, very proud of. And the Cowboys are in great shape. And so, I just don't look back and say, what if?
Yeah, Clarence, I'll say this. I apologize about my voice, but the thing that we got to be a part of was intense at certainly from my perspective. And so to have gotten there and then ended up where we were, which was successful, I lost some tolerance that when I was a little more humble or whatever. But I lost some tolerance because I had kind of, and I know it sounds like true confession, but I'm serious. It was more of, look, I had been there through a lot of butt kickings that we'd had over the last. And we certainly were enjoying that kind of success. And I literally thought this thing could get more, maybe from me, but certainly I thought it was time. And I sensed, without speaking for him, I sensed that he thought it was possibly time to go. What we were going to do going forward, I didn't give that, really didn't give it that kind of thought that you might think I would have. I went over to see my mother and daddy the night before we met, and I met them in Hot Springs, Arkansas. First time Mother had ever been out with me and Dad when we were having a few drinks. And that was rare because we enjoyed talking to each other and spelling it out. And I was sharing with him my feelings. Is it me? Is it me? And he asked me, and Mama too said, don't you think you could get this thing right and maybe go another year or two? And I basically introspectively said, what Jimmy brings is a lot of the best of me, enthusiasm and what have you. When it's going the other way, I don't like myself. I really don't. And it's taken away. It's taken away from it. So that mentality probably caused me to not be as tolerant as maybe we could have gone. Now, the other issue, though, was, and I'm not speaking for him, he had a lot to say about it, too, to say the least.
Sometimes I'm kind of like a gypsy. I'd never been anywhere more than 5 years. And so, I got to the point after winning a couple of Super Bowls, almost to the point of saying, hey, I've accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. And so sometimes you lose sight of what you can do because of what you've already done. But the one thing, and let me just throw this in, and Jerry and I were visiting earlier on. I think something that we're both very proud of is when we first came to the Cowboys, there was no holds barred. I mean, it was no rules. Just because the NFL did it a certain way, we didn't have to do it that way. I go out there and, I asked our strength coach, Bob Ward, I said, where's our players? And he said, well, it's cold here. And, our players, they don't come around in the off season. I said, come around in the off season, my ass. I said, they're going to be here every day. We got training camp and we got to lift weights. And I said, where's our weight room? There's an old, cyclone fence out there. And he said, you can't lift weights here. It's too cold in Dallas. And I go to Jerry. I said, Jerry, we got to build us a weight room. We got to get those players. And so we started working those players out year round. And I forgot who the media was, but they said, man, these guys are crazy. Those players will be worn slap out by the time they get to December. But we didn't know any different, and we just thought this was the way we did it. And Jerry and I talked about it. Hey, here's the way we're going to go. Everybody said, well, in the NFL, you take the best player available. And so Jerry and I talked about it, and I said, Jerry, what if we don't like that player? What do we do? But it was kind of that atmosphere that we had between the two of us that we weren't going to play with scared money. We were going to take chances, and we were going to do things that we believed were right, regardless what the NFL did. And I think that's one reason why we were able to jumpstart that thing.
I'd heard a lot of my life that you take two people back to back, and if they're really back to back, and they're thinking just alike, and they're really moving in unison and sync, they can move a mountain. Now, I don't know what happens if you get 3 or 4, but two people are bad to the bone. Now, really working together in sync. A lot of great things can happen there with that. There was no question that I had complete trust in Jimmy's opinion. A lot of this stuff is not hard, tangible we're talking about here. A lot of this stuff is based upon, do we think it will go? I know, Jimmy, I do want to point this out, but it was a protective thing. Jimmy would come back and check if I was in a tough meeting, and he'd say, how you doing? Are you okay? I know you've had a bad day with it. When Jimmy did his contract, we did it 10 years, and I thought, well, you're going to be here 27, Tom Landry was. And so, but anyway, the Cowboys signed it. Well, the Cowboys weren't worth the paper it was written on. They had, I bought part of them from the government. They had been foreclosed on. So their signature was not any good. And so when Jimmy finally, we got around to doing his contract, Cowboys signed it, and then I reached over, and nobody said anything, and I just personally guaranteed it. And I said, at least you can come get me and Gene if this thing doesn't work, and they're
and look how things turned out.
Yes,
but right. my point is, there was a real genuine get in, get it done. We all, when I say we all, Let me begin by saying what did happen was the greatest thing that frankly happened in my life, certainly professionally, was that period of time, those years that we were able to make those kinds of things happen. It changed my life.
And mine.
And so those kinds of things, and that enthusiasm that Jimmy would engender in my thinking, and that you saw with the team and what have you, that was alive and well. And back to the first question that came up, when that thing got a flame, got a damper put on it, then there was probably if you will, too much of a reaction.
Todd?
Jimmy, Todd Archer with ESPN. A number of your players, Troy, Michael, have talked about when they used to go into Texas Stadium and they'd see the names in the Ring of Honor, that kind of meant something to them. I was wondering if you had a similar experience when you walked in and you would see those names, if anything kind of registered with you.
Well, I don't think anybody can ever imagine what this means to me. This was a special time in my life. This was something that paid dividends for me the rest of my life. And it's something that I'm extremely proud of. You know, we took over the worst football team in the NFL. The worst. 3 straight losing seasons and a 3-13 record. And not only did we win Super Bowls, but we were able to put together the team of the 90s. And so obviously I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud to have my name up in the stadium.
I'd like to add to that, Tex, and I say this with all respect for Tex Ram, and he had pretty strong ideas about what the Ring of Honor is to him. And he said, first of all, he said, I hope that you will consider it exclusive, not have huge numbers of involvement. But he said, I like to think, whether it's Staubach, whether who it is, I'd like to think that apart from the way an individual may be thought about with the NFL Hall of Fame, I'm not trying to lift that above the NFL Hall of Fame at all, but just his perspective of what this means, I think it's very distinct. I think it's very different. Because what he wanted it to be was someone who had really made a serious step forward for the franchise. Not necessarily the one-loss record, the franchise. Now, it turns out there's only one other coach in it, and that's, of course, Tom Landry. And there's actually only a total of 3 there today that aren't players. That'll change here in just a little bit. But the point is, Jimmy is that, and he did make that kind of difference. And for the franchise, obviously a great coach and a great manager of the team. And so all of that is, I think, is reflected in a lot of ways with the NFL Hall of Fame. But it also is a different statement when we say, Jimmy, you now forevermore, rightfully so, in the Cowboys Ring of Honor.
Newey?
Newey Scruggs, NBC5, Dallas. Jerry, you're the decider when it comes to the Ring of Honor. Fans were upset when Tom Landry was let go. You got Tom Landry you mended fences there and got him in, and when Jimmy was let go, your fans were mad at you. Any message for them now that you've been able to get both men into the Cowboys Ring of Honor now and mend the fence?
Yeah, I'd take deference to I put them in the Ring of Honor. I get it. And it ultimately has to, the way it's structured is has to, okay. But they made themselves into the Ring of Honor. Coach Landry went into the Ring of Honor long before Jerry Jones. And so the Ring of Honor are made up of people who put themselves in the Ring of Honor. And in doing so, they lifted the Cowboys to a level that it wasn't or wouldn't have been had they not come along. And that's why Jimmy's going in.
Shireen?
Shireen Williams, NBC Sports Pro Football Talk. Jerry, there's only one Hall of Famer now not in the Ring of Honor. That's you. When do you put yourself in?
Well, when he gets to where he can lift something around here. Seriously, obviously, that enjoys a certain uncomfortableness on my part from that standpoint. I want to differentiate, though, seriously. Again, the difference in the NFL Hall of Fame and the Dallas Cowboy Ring of Honor. And so I don't have an answer for that question there, and I'm not so sure that, candidly, and I know this is whatever you think of it, but I'm not so sure we'll go there with this selector.
Well, just like when they asked me on the recommendation you going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I'll be the first one to say that you need to be in the Ring of Honor.
Well,
Jarrett?
Jared Bell, USA Today. Considering that it took so long for this day to happen, and as Newey alluded to, the fans asking about it. Jerry, this is for you. Psychologically speaking, how difficult was it for you to give Jimmy credit?
well, number one,
Can I interrupt on here, Jerry?
Yeah.
I think we're past on who gets credit. The two of us working together made history. And when I say working together, just like I told you earlier on, we talked every single day. And I don't ever recall, ever, us having a difference of opinion. I can't ever remember an argument. We were always on the same page. And so the credit needs to go to a lot of people. Jerry, Jimmy, a bunch of assistant coaches, some great players. Yeah, some of them weren't that great when we were 1-15, but they were pretty fantastic when we held up that trophy. So a lot of people take credit.
But let me also answer this, Jimmy. This didn't have to happen. It happened because it was the right thing to do, and that's not a difficulty of credit. It's just the right thing to do. Now you say, why has it lasted so long? As it turns out, when you go in, that means you were there all along, in that sense. And so I will agree with you. I will agree that somebody could have said, Jerry, shouldn't Jimmy have been in 15 years ago, 20 years ago? And you can say whatever you want to about my human reactions or frailties along that spot. I say this today, he's there because it's the right thing to do. He was always going in the Ring of Honor, whether I put him in or one of my kids put him in.
Michael?
Michael Gelkin, Dallas Morning News. If I could direct you guys to the photo on the wall there, of a very early press conference. That's a long time ago, and you guys go back even farther in terms of your time at Arkansas. When you see images like that, and you think back to how long this relationship dates, what are you most appreciative, and what times, I suppose, most come to mind about what you cherish most?
Well, I'll start that, Jimmy, by saying that I had mentioned that I stood on the bench to try to get Coach Brawls to make him the head coach at Arkansas. And then I really stood on the bench and pushed any way I knew how to push for him to be the head coach at Oklahoma State.
Right.
I was always wanting him to be the head coach, wherever. And so when the opportunity or the challenge or whatever of the Dallas Cowboys came along, it was a natural. I remember when I called Jimmy and he said, Jerry, I don't care if it's selling insurance or if it's plowing. I've always wanted to be on the team with you.
Right.
Just figure me in, if you will. And so the point is, it was a natural thing to do. This is a very natural thing to do, that we're sitting up here. Whatever I thought you were, worth 5 Heisman trophies, whatever I thought you were and we'd been good enough friends that I knew some of what he wasn't. Okay, but whatever that I thought you were, you over-delivered.
Well, thank you. And that first press conference, that picture up there, he's still in charge of the socks and the jocks. But that press conference there, I felt like we were going into a hornet's nest, and we were. And I just wanted to give out a message, just be patient with us, give us a chance, because confidence has never been lacking with Jerry or myself. Both of us felt like we were going to get the job done if people would just be patient with us.
I will say this, there was a nice long list that had pointed out how we were going to bust our ass. A big, long list of them, and had a lot of reasons why we were going to at the time. And if you recall, football was kind of sliding a little bit at that particular time. Even here in Dallas, the Mavericks were hot. Cowboys a little slow moving when they looked at it like that. They were talking about reducing TV contracts. This was no silk purse. But I will tell you right now, to get involved with it, I wanted to be with someone that I had confidence in, that was extraordinarily talented, that I believed in, and that's why Jimmy deserves to be in the Ring of Honor. You over-delivered.
Ed?
Ed Warder, ESPN. Jimmy, I'd like you to expound on the significance of this achievement to you in such a short amount of time. When you walk out there tonight, there's going to be two coaches in the 60-year history of the Cowboys who have their names on that facade. You've been acknowledged by the Hall of Fame, but to now be acknowledged by the franchise where you accomplished this and by the owner and your partner you did it with, what is the significance of that to you?
I think the significance has a little bit to do with the players. We got some players back in '89, and we struggled. And those players got better and better and better. And we were able to accomplish something that most people didn't think that we could ever accomplish. And we did it in a short amount of time. But would you rather coach for 20 years and win a couple of playoff games, or coach for 5 and win a couple of Super Bowls? Like I said before, I don't think anybody can imagine how I feel. I'm proud. I'm proud of what we were able to accomplish. And when I say we, Jerry and I and everybody around here, I mean, our entire organization, everybody was pulling together. And you get that many people pulling together, you can accomplish a lot of things. And like I said, I'm just proud to be there.
And we'll wrap it up with Mac.
Mac Engel, Forward Star Telegram. Guys, we've seen other great teams come and go. When you look back on it, did you ever get numb to or take your success for granted, like it would just always be there?
Well, like I said, we've never lacked on confidence. There was never a doubt in our mind. I remember when I was at Oklahoma State, and I hate to make it personal, but I'll do it anyway. When I was at Oklahoma State, I had my crew, Wanstead, Wise, Butch Davis, all those guys. We were at Ancestor Restaurant. I said, guys, I know it's pretty ugly right now, but hang with me. We're going to win a national championship. And so we ended up winning a national championship at Miami, our crew. And that first year we were 1-15, and that was ugly. I mean, and everybody doubted us. An oil man from Arkansas and a college coach that didn't know what the hell he was doing. And they were ripping us on a regular basis. But we went over to a little restaurant not too far from Valley Ranch. And I said, guys, I told you we're going to win a national championship. I said, there's no doubt in my mind we're going to win us a Super Bowl. Just be patient. We're on the right track. And so I think, yeah, you know, a lot of people dream. We never really dreamed. You know, we truly believed that we were going to get it done. And I think Jerry has that same feeling, or else he wouldn't have bought the Cowboys. He believed that he was going to be successful, regardless what the financial situation was. He had that kind of belief. And our guys, not only, and it all trickles down. Jerry, myself, the assistant coaches, the players, you know, by that second year, hey, we would have made the playoffs the second year. We're going from 1-15 to could have made the playoffs if Troy doesn't hurt his shoulder against Philadelphia. And then we make the playoffs. Then we win a couple of Super Bowls. Every player, every coach, everybody in the organization were on the same page. We truly did believe we were going to win us the Super Bowl.
All righty, that'll conclude things. Thanks, everybody, for coming again, and thank you, Jimmy and Jerry.